Okay, I want to first start off by saying I am not a Republican, and I barely knew much about United States military until now. Hi, I'm Amirah, and not only am I the narrator of this essay, I am just a girl who loves her dad and wanted to dive more into his experiences of being in the military during, well, a pretty rough time, and America wasn't doing so great. And if you didn't know that, well, now you know. And to be honest, that's kind of the motto for today. To anyone watching this, it's about learning something new. I mean, that's why I chose this topic. I wanted to really know what was it like for my dad and others who were just like him. And of course, I'm also going to make this his Christmas present. But anyway, without further ado, I present you, Dad, tell me your story. Now, put your thinking caps on and make sure you pay close attention. Let's start off with the facts. Currently, the U.S. government spends about $820 billion on defense each year. According to usafacts.org, in 2023, the U.S. military roughly spent 13.3% of the entire federal budget for the fiscal year. The Department of Veterans Affairs, aka the VA, accounted for 3.5% of the federal spending in 2023. Within the adjustment for inflation, the VA increased over 70% over the last decade, from $180 billion in 2013. But why am I telling you this? This funding is vital for supporting veterans' well-being, honoring our moral responsibility to those who serve, and providing essential post-war aid like employment and housing, while also addressing the urgent mental health crisis they face. In this video essay, to help reconcile this exploration, I will be interviewing my dad and asking questions about his experience in being in Iraq and Afghanistan, while also using my archival source, Agent Orange, that was a historical event that proves the systemic neglect that veterans have been facing for years from the government. Let's start off with my dad. Like, what was your reason for joining the military? Did you actually want it to save the country, or was it just like...
40,000 or 30-some thousand, I forget how much it was, from college. So, to pay Uncle Sam back, I joined Uncle Sam.
So I'm using one of the writers, Suzanne Gordon. She wrote Wounds of War, and she often emphasizes that the VA is often criticized for, even though they're like the few institutions that actually provide care for veterans. Like, how well do you feel like the VA took care of you after your service? Like, do you think they need to improve some things?
They need to improve a lot because they're not compensating people correctly. You have to prove that you have some type of disorder when you know you have something going on. It's just a whole bunch of...
And as I was reading Author Finnicle, he wrote, "Thank you for your service." He writes about how veterans face struggles with coming back to their civilian lives. What do you think was the hardest part for you to come back home?
And I felt like the world owed me something. Like, when I got a speeding ticket, I was like, I fought to give you the right to write that speeding ticket.
Which is true, though. It's true, though. Pause. Since my dad says the VA needs to improve a lot, let's think of how much the VA impacted Agent Orange. Agent Orange was an herbicide used by the U.S. military during the Vietnam War in 1962 to kill the plants and trees that were in the soldiers' way so they can see clearly in the war. The herbicide was severely toxic, containing dioxin that linked to many health problems, some being cancer, birth defects, and other life-threatening diseases that the Vietnamese population and veterans experience. Many U.S. veterans who fought in Agent Orange began reporting to the VA that they have been experiencing problems with their skin, respiratory system, and psychological problems, of course. These problems were neglected by the VA and the government for decades and were fixed by providing pills to these veterans, leaving them with more problems than what they came in with. Due to the lagging response from government officials, families of veterans, and others began to protest in the 1980s and 1990s. for compensation, medical care, and public acknowledgement from the government about what is going on. It wasn't until February 1997 where the government finally released a public document that outlined the health effects from Agent Orange and VA's efforts to provide medical care. Keep in mind, the war happened in 1962, by the way. The delayed response from the government that took years and years to address is an example of neglect. So since things like Agent Orange review were established in helping the soldiers, because they came out with this huge review for like soldiers to do, have you ever had to advocate for your mental or physical health after your service?
I think I got nerve damage and I'm trying to relate it to burn pits.
Similar to Agent Orange, U.S. soldiers who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan wars used burn pits to dispose of their waste during combat, which released toxic fumes. Soldiers who were stationed near these pits were reported with severe respiratory issues, cancers, and other illnesses. Have you heard of something called the burn pits?
Yeah. Well, I didn't burn it. We watched the locals, the guards. The stuff that I witnessed them burn was human waste.
Were you ever like concerned with getting like any like long-term exposures from being in war? Like, I know the burn pits is very similar to like the Agent Orange, you know.
I mean, I'm concerned now, but then I didn't care whether I lived or died. That's the mentality you gotta have over there to survive.
Do you feel like veterans need more recognition?
I would say so.
With that being said, this brings me to my conclusion. From Agent Orange to modern-day burn pits, the connection between these two is the failed recognition of the side effects these eruptions cause on soldiers. In this essay, the use of Agent Orange was important because it serves as a historical example of the reoccurring pattern of systemic neglect for veterans' physical and mental well-being. In researching and interviewing my dad for this project, I learned a lot and realized there is a cost when one is serving for the country, and the strength should always be acknowledged. So you might ask, if this is so important, what should we do? Well, support veteran organizations. There are way more than the VA. When you see a veteran, thank them, and continue to be open and learn individual stories. With that being said, I thank you for watching. That's what's up, Dad. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. All right, love you, Dad.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.